This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth, coming at you today with some good news and some bad news. So let's start with the good. Canada's top doctor who pushed COVID jabs and masks resigns from her position. Dr. Theresa Tam, Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, is resigning after a controversial tenure that included promoting experimental vaccines and mandates. In the early months of 2020, Dr. Theresa Tam became very well known by Canadians for leading the country in the response to COVID-19's pandemic and by pushing for arbitrary and dangerous regulations. In the early days, when it came to wearing masks, she went from saying, it can sometimes make it worse if the person puts their finger in their eye or touches their face under their mask. She also said wearing a mask could give people a false sense of security that could encourage wearers to relax physical distancing. Most people haven't learned how to use masks, and there is no need to use a mask for well people. Speaking to reporters on March 30th, Tam said that putting a mask on asymptomatic persons is not beneficial. She reiterated her concerns about the potential negative aspects of wearing masks, namely that they don't protect the wearer's eyes and could encourage people to touch their faces more as they fidget with the masks. She went from that to saying this: if you choose to engage in an in-person sexual encounter with someone outside of your household or close contact bubble, there are steps that you can take to reduce your risk, like skipping kissing and avoiding face-to-face contact or closeness. Consider using a mask that covers the nose and mouth. So she went from wearing them is potentially bad to put a mask on while you're having sex. In my April of 2020 video, Contact Tracing is Big Brother, and Dr. Theresa Tam is a tool for the surveillance state, I warned you how Theresa Tam was being used as a tool by the powers that ought not be to help set up a Big Brother surveillance state, all in the name of health and safety. And over the next couple of years, that is exactly what we saw play out with the implementation of vaccine passports and contact tracing apps. That was an epic violation of our rights. Well, folks, let's now move on to the bad news. Meet your new president of the Public Health Agency of Canada, Nancy Hamzawi, a hijab-wearing Muslim whose double chin screams of so-called health. Now, before you accuse me of fat shaming, please understand she is overweight and she is supposed to be a leader of our public health. Imagine going to a gym and the trainer that you hired is fat. Do you not think that you would have a problem with that? Well, this seems to be all par for the course in Canada when you consider this man was once Quebec's health minister, where the Globe and Mail once said, Quebec's new health minister is overweight. Does it affect his job? Gee, you think? And this seems to be a global phenomenon. Remember Maggie de Block, who was the Minister of Health in Belgium from 2014 to 2020? Yep, I sure do want to take health advice from that person. On Facebook, I said, man, I hope that scarf isn't hiding an Adam's apple, but at this point, I certainly wouldn't be surprised. And that is certainly no stretch of the imagination when you consider the direction that the Liberal government has gone. Plus, remember in the US when Joe Biden's pick for the Assistant Secretary of Health was Rachel Levine, a transgender woman, aka a man, who they referred to as the first ever female 4-star admiral, and who was named as one of USA Today's Women of the Year in 2022, which recognizes women who have made a significant impact on society, which robbed real women of that title, which should have gone to anyone but him. And the current Minister of Health, RFK Jr., also poses a very serious cause for concern.
We think that wearables are a key to the MAHA agenda, making America healthy again, and we are going to, my vision is that every American is wearing a wearable within 4 years.
Folks, these wearables are used for biometric monitoring, and all of the information uploaded to them will be used by the government and leveraged against you in the future, especially if you are someone who they want to silence. But I digress. Let's get back to the issue of Canada's newest leader in the field of health. Ms. Hamzawi served as the Assistant Deputy Minister of Health Canada's Health Products and Food Branch, which plays a vital role in protecting and promoting the health and safety of all Canadians. Again, do you really want to take food and health advice from someone who clearly doesn't even know how to manage her own health and well-being? I think not. Ms. Hamzawi also assumed the role of acting federal lead and ADM of policy and strategic integration of the COVID-19 testing, contact tracing, and data strategy secretariat at Health Canada. Great. So this is everything that was bad about Theresa Tam on PCP times 100. Before joining the health portfolio from 2018 to 2020, Ms. Hamzawi served as ADM of Environment and Climate Change Canada's Science and Technology Branch, working to ensure the department is a national and world leader in advancing, connecting, and applying scientific understanding of the environment to anticipate and address the most pressing environmental issues, most notably climate change. Man-made climate change is one of the biggest hoaxes perpetuated on mankind, and she's one of the ones pushing this nonsense. Watch her now explain her position on that, and let's also count the amount of ums and ahs that she stutters through while simply trying to speak.
How many people have heard the sentence, Canada's climate has changed at twice the rate, the global rate, 3 times in the north? How many people have heard that? So typically, and this is a typical audience, about 90% of people have heard that sentence that has come from Canada's Changing Climate Report, but that's an indicator of the extent to which others have deemed that to be the truth. Earlier, we were someone was asking me, do you face skeptics in your role? And we do. So, despite the fact that we find 90% on average of people believing that and having the confidence in the science, there's not quite 90%, but a significant proportion of Canadians and global citizens who do not believe that and inform us of that view based on the number of dockets I sign off in a day indicating otherwise. So part of our responsibility, I think, in terms of the context in which we operate and live is making sure that we communicate at every possible opportunity what the facts are, and engaging with people that we don't necessarily aren't our normal interlocutors in order to be able to move forward effectively on the issue. So I guess those would be some of the reflections on the issue.
33 ums and ahs. And just look at the face on the guy in the background, which I think speaks for us all. Now, some people have suggested that just by simply pointing out that she is a Muslim could be seen by some as racist. So let me explain to you why that is not the case. There is absolutely nothing racist about having concerns with a culture and a religion that is at fundamental odds with Western Christian standards and values. Sharia law is not compatible with Christian values. Allow me to reiterate this fact with a clip from a video that I put together nearly a decade ago now. There are people who subscribe to Islam and live in the West and remain as peaceful as your average Christian. I mean, of course, there are peaceful Muslims. But of course, they are not Muslims who are actually following the Quran. Some will say, well, how is that any different from any Christian values of old from the West? Well, for the Christian, there's a new covenant with God through the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. A lot of the Old Testament laws of the Israelites are no longer applicable because Christ changed all that by taking it upon himself so that the world might be saved through him. If you actually read Jesus' words or Paul's letters or virtually anything in the New Testament, you'll see that there is no call to violently spread the word of Christ. There are passages that are going to rub up against some of the worldviews of secular people, but Christians aren't out beheading homosexuals and murdering people who've left the faith. or perpetuating a real rape culture against women. Islam, on the other hand, has always violently opposed dissent. They've always spread their beliefs through conquest and war. The Christian Crusades are just a tiny part of history. The violence of Islam has been here since its beginnings. Nations like the US and Canada that were founded on Christian morals have actually been so welcoming to other ideas that now, generations after our founding, many of us have become secularized. People are now talking about keeping the words God or the Ten Commandments away from any government building or school. But Sharia law? Yeah, sure, why not? I mean, you're not xenophobic, are you? No, we're not xenophobic, and we're not suffering from Islamophobia, which is a nonsensical term that has been pushed by the media to convince you that anyone who says anything about Muslims is racist. I actually have no problem at all with immigration or immigrants coming to Canada, so long as it's done right, and so long as they are willing to assimilate with our Christian ways of living. Check out this interview I did with an absolute hero of immigration who has worked her entire life to help bring people from war-torn countries to Canada. And please listen very closely to what she has to say. The situation with refugees coming into Canada right now is growing out of control in more ways than one. The backlog is growing. Families are being dropped off and left feeling completely abandoned. And all the while, the Trudeau government, along with the public sector, are doing everything that they can to stifle the efforts of the real heroes. Those in the private sector who are doing everything they can to save the lives of those fleeing war-torn countries. In today's video, I interviewed one of those heroes, a woman who's been involved behind the scenes of the various refugee sponsorship programs for over 30 years here in Canada. And what she is witnessing today will turn your stomach and make your heart sink. She asked that I not reveal her identity, and I will certainly honor that to protect this very important source. So without further ado, this is the truth about Canadian refugees, what you need to know. Something that's been happening, it seems to be a growing phenomenon all over the world, and when we're talking about this proportional representation, it seems that the Christian community is systematically being left out of this. I find that a lot of Syrian refugees, various refugees coming from the Middle East, tend to not be of the Christian faith. And in having worked on in behind the scenes in all of this, have you experienced the same thing? Have you noticed that is it more difficult to bring Christians over, for example, than it is to bring non-Christians?
Yes, I do find that. For the private sector, I find that it seems to take much longer for the private sponsorship refugees to come over, and especially those as Christians. You have to remember, Christianity, especially in the Middle East, has experienced a genocide, and most often the government is not recognizing that, even though it's been brought up in Parliament a number of times, and they've asked to please recognize this, that the Christians are being, there is a genocide going on, and that we really need to be able to help them with that. And in my own experience, actually, really back from even the Vietnamese, I remember having Christians refused, and back then, I remember one gentleman being refused. Actually, I'm sorry, it's not the Vietnamese, it was a Middle East Christian from Iraq, and he was refused, but he was being interviewed by a Muslim immigration officer in I think it was Damascus, Iraq at the time. Damascus, I think it was. And he was refused. And it was because he had identified the tribe that Muslim came from, or that kind of group that it came from, saying, these are the people that were persecuting me and why I had to run and what his story was, which is a true, authentic story. But they found him inadmissible, not believing his story. But I found out that he was actually interviewed by a Muslim from the particular group that he said that was the one that persecuted him, was a group and that persecuted him. So there was a conflict of interest there, and I actually brought that up, and we were able to resubmit that application. But even from back then, I found that had happened. And now I had an opportunity of going to Lebanon, actually, and sitting and talking with some Christian refugees. And I did say to them, up the, I think it was 2,500 that the Prime Minister brought to Canada on the Syrian relief at that time. Do you know how many were Christians? And they said, well, none of my friends or none of them, and they all, felt that it was the majority were Muslims that arrived, that came.
And that's the problem, folks. It's not about immigration itself. It comes down to who are they immigrating and who is being placed into high positions of power, like the president of the Public Health Agency of Canada. Consider this chart on immigration from 1952 to 2025. What the heck happened after 2020? I'll tell you what. The plan to destabilize the West by guys like George Soros has happened not organically, but all by design. And people are fed up with it. Have you seen Brampton, Ontario lately? Have you been to a Tim Hortons lately?
No, the T.
Portuguese bagel?
T. T-E-A.
Yeah, I got a cheese. So are you looking for Portuguese bagel?
The T.
Cheese bagel, right?
No, T.
I can get it.
Like tea, like the drink. Like a tea bag?
Oh, the tea bag?
Yeah, apple cinnamon.
Oh, we didn't carry the apple cinnamon. We for the...
So I'm not happy with them that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Do you want to respond to that?
So, needless to say, Canada is fundamentally changing, and there is nothing wrong or racist with having concerns about what is currently happening to this country. Nancy Hamzawi is going to be making a whopping salary of anywhere between $275,000 to $324,000 a year. For what? To and ah her way through a 2-paragraph speech that just pushes hoaxes on the Canadian people? No thank you, folks. No, thank you. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, guys. Are you happy with the direction that Canada has been going? Or have things gone just a little too far for you? And if you appreciate my efforts to bring you this information, please consider making a contribution at the top link in the description below at pressfortruth.ca/donate. So that's all for today, folks. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Please click the thumbs up button, share this video with your friends and family who you think need to see it the most. And stay tuned, guys. We're going to have more video reports coming soon, God willing. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth. We all want truth. The truth will set you free.